Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to Liberty Scheme. I just wanted to talk about two core principles that are causing me to, I voted for Trump once, went in plugging my nose because I was like, God, this guy, he paid an adult actress. He is dirty. He fights. He takes cheap shots at the candidates I really like. I'm a Rand Paul guy. I would have loved Rand Paul. So I went there and voted against Hillary. And not just against Hillary, but against the leftist Democratic Party, because I believe that they're moving us close to socialism. That's what I'm going to hit on here. But there's two fundamental things that we have to stick to as non-leftists. So real quick, I voted for Trump once, didn't like him. It took me about 3 weeks of watching the insanity of these people throwing a hissy fit out in the streets and thinking that the world had ended just because their candidate for president didn't get it. They were all, women were upset that we didn't have a woman president, and they thought that this was some veto on women being in power. No, it wasn't. You ran a crooked socialist crony, right? And not just rhetoric-wise, policy-wise, she's horrific. Like, she is bad in all policy. Her policy is absolute garbage for those of us that believe in the free enterprise market. Anyways, the second time, I'm going to vote for him again. I'm going to vote for Donald Trump right now. And I don't even like him. Like, him as a person, I hate what he says on Twitter. I like how he picks fights, but that's the sinful side of me that likes that. And I'm going to vote for him again, even though I don't like him. And it's because of some core things. Here's a couple of them. First of all, socialism. Democrats are socialists. The Socialist Party has moved its way into the Democratic Party. The Democrats are socialists now. Even if they don't think, a lot of people are like, oh, you just call your political adversaries socialists. Nope. Joe Biden has taken Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders and verbatim his policy papers that he just put out in this week in July here. They're like verbatim from Bernie Sanders. The Green New Deal is basically us turning everything into we are going to give the means of production in energy. We're going to get rid of fossil fuels because they're convinced that the world's going to end because of carbon emissions, and it is insanity. But here's two things I want everybody to think about. One, anyone who wants the state to be in charge of the means of production, which is the technical definition of socialism, is an absolute fool, because of one, and this is the second part. When the state takes over anything, you look at healthcare, when the state is in charge of anything, it destroys incentives. It destroys incentives in a big way. So as we move towards socialism, why socialism is such a bad idea is because right now you get to work wherever you want for however much money you want in whatever sector or industry you want, because the means of production is not controlled by the state. Also, things are made and profits are made, and all of the market supply is provided by the free market. So we have these complex, in the complex invisible hand of the market makes sure that it gets toilet paper to people in just the right time at just the right price. And you have the supply and demand curve. Supply is how many companies there are, how much toilet paper is getting made, how does that supply, and then you have demand, right? And when you have central planning in socialism, where the government takes over the means of production, so just imagine they're in charge of toilet paper now. When that happens, what you will see is that central planner, rather than giving just the right supply at just the right price so that demand does it, and then it learns quickly because it learns the lesson of the market. They get it wrong, they lose money, they sit on inventory, and they can't do it. Government planners or central bureaucrats and central planners sitting in a room somewhere, we saw this in the Soviet Union, get it wrong. So it leads to surpluses, it leads to inflation, and it leads to not just surpluses, but shortages, big time shortages. Now, the market, when we had the toilet paper debacle and kind of like the Clorox wipe debacle here during the pandemic, the market reacted pretty quickly. They were able to have toilet paper back on the shelves in the matter of days or weeks, right? And really, it was just that, they're getting supply chain every single day, and we were eating up so much more supply than usual. And they also knew that would go down eventually. So you don't dare ramp up all you know, you can't order too much toilet paper because then all of a sudden all of us will calm down because the news calms down and boom, you'd be fine. So, but the market was able to fix that very quickly. Now, look at something a little more sophisticated like the hog markets or the meat markets, right? So we had all these slaughterhouses shut down for a period of time, which caused all the hogs to eat a little bit longer. And hogs eat so fast and put on so much weight that they get fat so quick. Our slaughtering facilities weren't made to allow a hog past a certain size. So what happened is that we had to go out and euthanize a whole bunch of hog, a whole bunch of livestock, because the supply chain was broken just a little bit. And now, when you poke in a little bit deeper, you realize that part of why that was that way was because you cannot have meat processing done at something that's not an FDA facility. We have a hard bureaucracy around that it has to be an FDA facility. You cannot just start slaughtering animals wherever you want because we want to protect consumers. But it's a good example of by hindering the supply of slaughterhouses, right? The supply of slaughterhouses could not go up quickly to meet the demand because of a hard bureaucracy, ultimately because government's in charge of it. They had no interest. They don't care about, hey, quick, guys, we got to let the slaughtering industry, we got to make sure that we make profits. So, guys, we have some spillover. Hey, let's get some mobile shops up where we can slaughter, or let's get some local slaughtering laws and law in place so we can get these hogs to hungry people, especially people are hurting for money right now. No. What happened was they just kept the law. They had no interest in helping. So when supply is hit, bad things happen. And if we put government in charge of supply in healthcare or in anything, they will wreck it because they don't have the systems, because the free market just delivers it because we want it. They have to earn the business, right? Whereas government, when they're in charge of production, they don't have to steward their resources to earn the business of supply. They're in charge. So I'm telling you, we have to get really clear on that any bureaucracy or red tape or government agency or government law that limits supply, whether that's supply of housing because we have so many zoning laws, whether it's supply of healthcare and doctors and nurses and medicine, because there's so many laws to protect consumers that you can't get supply to market quick enough. It's bad. So it's not just that conservatives need to be against additional laws and bureaucracy and red tape because it's anti-business. It's that it gets in the way of supply, which hinders demand. Like, you can't get drugs and hospital goods right now for cheap. If you go look at the inflation rate since 1998, we have like a quadrupling of inflation in hospital services, health insurance, higher education, all areas. You have government touching this, not only so government supply for healthcare, higher education, and insurance. Government pays and causes artificial inflation because they subsidize it, A, and B, you have with the accreditation systems and with the Joint Commission stuff that basically if you're in Medicare, you have to make sure you're up to par, which I get it, it's consumer protection law. But what happens is supply is limited. We don't get new doctors very quickly. We don't get more colleges that can come in and actually educate people quickly because they have to go through the processes. It's very hard to get more of anything. And whenever you do that, we are hindering our system. So when you look at like the Green New Deal, you look at anything the Democrats are proposing right now, they say they want to help people, but really what they're trying to do is they're trying to set up their own little agency of power or their insiders that will be central planners and take over the means of production, and it will be so bad for us. It's unfathomable. And we have to vote against that. So I didn't vote for Trump I voted for Trump the first time. I'll be voting for him a second time because it's very clear right now that the policies that the Democratic Party are putting out are absolutely 100% socialist because they want to either add laws which are a pseudo takeover of in laws, red tape. It's a pseudo takeover, a pseudo means of production takeover by the state. It's just it's a close version of it. Or they straight up want a single payer healthcare system because it's a human right. You put the government in charge of sand and the Sahara Desert will run out. That's what Ronald Reagan said. And the reason why is because they have no incentive to get supply to market and meet demand. All they will do is get it wrong with their central planning. We can't allow that. That's a big deal. So that's one of the main reasons I'll be voting for Trump. The second big reason is, when it comes to people forcing you to rely on the government, I don't want to have to sit around and wait for police to protect me if I ever need it. Second Amendment rights matter. My daughters, as they get older, they're going to be armed. They're going to know how to use firearms. And because I never want them to be in their apartment someday when they leave me, or if they're out and about in their car, and I never want them standing there waiting for the police to save them. They should be able to have agency over their life. Black lives matter. Women's lives matter. All people matter. And because of that, all law-abiding citizens should be able to have the means to acquire safety by lethal force. The Second Amendment is so critical. It's unbelievable. And the Democratic Party wants to outlaw and make it really hard for the supply of guns to actually meet the demand. They're going to make it so hard for us to be able to own firearms, and that's wrong. I'm not a pro-murdering person. I believe in the Ten Commandments. I believe in God's law. I don't want to shoot or kill anyone. It would take so much for me to actually shoot somebody. They'd have to be harming somebody pretty badly for me to do it. But my daughters, man, why should they just not be able to acquire their own safety and have to rely on the government or the state or police, which is ironic now. So Second Amendment and socialism are really the two primary reasons we cannot allow any amounts of socialism into our government, because it will lead to horrible, terrible things. And it just starts with the easy things of government taking over industry by industry. Anyways, if you disagree with me, that's all right. We can argue about this hard. And maybe you're a Democrat and you're like, oh, I'm not a socialist. I think if you poke into it, you start realizing that if you're advocating government and government bureaucrats to take over the means of production in any way, shape, or form, you haven't thought this through to understand that they don't have any incentive to get it right, which means they will get it wrong, which leads to famines. It leads to terrible things. We can't look to Denmark. We can't look to Norway. They're the size of Wisconsin. They're a joke compared to the massive amount of military power and might, economic power and might, and just overall influence the United States has. Socialism will become a murderous dictator, guaranteed, if we allow it to take hold in a country like this. Because that's what happened in the USSR. It's what happened in Central America. When there's actual power going on, when there's real power happening, socialism turns into a terrible situation very quickly. Anyways, welcome to Liberty Scheme. Have a good one.